Good evening and thanks for joining us for the 11 o'clock update, the very latest on Laura as it continues to inch its way closer to the coastline, just about to make landfall right now. You can see it on the satellite picture, that very wide eye. You can see some of those heavier bands already starting to slide in across Holly Beach and right into Cameron Parish, a little bit south of Lake Charles. Notice again those very strong rain bands already scraping the coast from Vermilion Bay and pushing inland. We're already getting some pretty intense wind reports from areas such as Abbeville and mainly south of I-10 from the Jennings area and Scott. So again, just know that the storm is starting to move in, and at this pace it should be inland probably just before midnight or around midnight at this point. So this could be a landfall on the 26th or possibly very, very early on the 27th. And right now you can see that those winds are currently sustained at 150 miles per hour. The pressure has leveled out, which means I don't see much more in the way of strengthening just before landfall. So again, it continues to head north-northwest at about 15 miles per hour. And again, that looks to be just around Holly Beach or between there and the Cameron area for landfall. I do want to point out too, it's now about 60 miles south of Lake Charles. So Lake Charles to Holly Beach is roughly about 30 to 40 miles. So you can kind of see that we're only talking about maybe another 30 miles to go before landfall. So again, that won't take long. So by midnight or just slightly after. So here's the current path, and you see we got winds sustained at 150, gusts at 185, heading north-northwest now at 115, and the current pressure now sits at 938. And again, that's kind of a deal. Notice that also I want to point out where it was kind of modified a little bit. We were talking about this system rapidly weakening once inland, but now it seems like the forecast is calling for still a pretty decent hurricane, a Category 2, below major hurricane strength, but still a Category 2 storm halfway up the state around Toledo Bend, and then moving through Shreveport as possibility of a Category 1, and then sliding through the Little Rock area with some heavy rainfall, and then eventually becoming a depression right around the Tennessee Valley, heading towards the mid-Atlantic states, and potentially could even redevelop out in the Atlantic. But for us, we got to look at that current path, and when you see the system kind of walk in, you'll notice that we're concerned here in the capital area. It's all about those rain bands, and it really seems that all models are agreeing that we're going to see some pretty heavy bands developing on the eastern side of the storm. And as you notice here, we could be starting out with rain as early as 2 o'clock in the morning. By 6 o'clock in the morning, we're still sitting up underneath those bands, dropping 2 to 3 inches of rain for multiple hours. I also want to point out that we do sit underneath a tornado watch now until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning on Thursday. So again, we still have the potential for tornadoes to spawn overnight. And here's the issue. It's going to be nighttime, so the concern is we do get some power outages possibly happening over the next few hours. Well, then we got to be concerned about things such as, again, we got to be concerned about, sorry, more updates are just currently coming in. Right now we're seeing isolated rainfall amounts of 7 to 9 inches and flooding in significant places. And that's again already for South and central Louisiana. Okay, so that's the latest information from the National Weather Service. Some areas have already seen 7 to 9 inches of rain. So how about that? And it hasn't even made landfall yet. So as you notice, again, we fall underneath one of those rain bands. Talk about 2-3 inches of rain per hour. You add that up, you can do the math. We're talking maybe 8+ inches of rainfall in a lot of locations. Notice that rain still through mid to late morning, finally getting a break by mid to late afternoon. But as you notice, models still trending and picking up more rainfall as Laura makes its way towards the east. And see here, we're under wind advisory for the eastern side of the Mississippi River, a tropical storm warning towards the west on the west side of the Mississippi River, and you're talking just around Lake Charles. Obviously, that again is all a hurricane warning. It looks like we are starting to get some questions from some viewers, so please continue to send in those questions. Meadville, Mississippi, what is going to go on there? Well, again, you're a little bit further north and east of the storm, but there still is that potential for some heavy rain bands to kind of move through that area. Expect those rainfall rates to be very intense at times. You still have the chance for maybe an isolated tornado or two, but you're kind of going to be on the outside fringe of that happening. So again, maybe some gusty winds out there, but you should stay probably just below, I would say, tropical storm force winds. We've also got another question. And how bad is it going to get in Hammond, Louisiana? Well, compared to the big picture right now, you're probably going to be in the best shape. The farther east you live, the better things will become. But again, you may get one tropical storm force wind, but I think for you guys mainly in the 20 to 30 mile an hour range. And as you see here, just speaking of tropical storm force winds, that's 39 miles per hour or greater. And we're talking right through the downtown area of Baton Rouge. Pretty much guaranteed that we're going to see tropical storm force winds. So as you notice, even all of Acadiana, all the way to the coastline, and obviously those hurricane force winds just around Lake Charles. Just give you an estimate on those winds. And you see overall, again, right around midnight, we could be seeing those winds pick up to about 40 miles per hour right along the coast, over 127 miles per hour. By the time we get to about 3 in the morning, those winds would be sitting at about 125 to maybe 46. So again, probably just shy of about 50 miles per hour, a couple gusts out there, and you can still kind of see that the winds are going to be pretty strong in those big feeder bands, kind of really extending back into the Gulf of Mexico. So we're talking about 55 plus possible at times, with maybe some surges here and there. And really the winds don't really relax until about tomorrow afternoon. So storm surge warning for the entire coast. And obviously this is the big story. As you notice there, 20 feet of storm surge. We're talking 2 stories out there. And they called it earlier today when they had the press conference, unsurvivable storm surge. So you got to think about that. That is very concerning for all those who decided to stick it out and get through the storm and wait it. I mean, again, just hunker down. So again, best bet was to obviously evacuate, because again, that is a lot of water moving inland. When you look at the current storm surge map and see that water can get nearly up to I-10. And as I just mentioned earlier, I-10 Lake Charles is about 30, 40 miles from the coast. So give you an idea, that is mainly because it's a lot of swamp, bayou, marsh in there and some inland lakes. And the concern is all that water is obviously getting pushed further and further inland. So here's the story. Flash flood watch, obviously probably our biggest concern at this point, where we could easily see 8+ in some locations. You can kind of see how those feeder bands are pushing back into the capital area by early morning. I think impacts are really going to start to go downhill, I would say, a couple hours after midnight here, and you see even this model indicating, and still pretty much on point. It's been pretty consistent that we could be seeing anywhere from 8, maybe 10 inches of rainfall in some of these bands. And it just depends on where does that heavy rain really kind of set up at this point, because if it does set up on the eastern side of the Mississippi, you got to think that all goes and drains into the Atchafalaya Basin. We got to watch our bayous and our streams like Ward Creek, Dawson Creek. You got to start thinking about the Comey, the Amite, all of that water. Hopefully it doesn't move in north of I-12, because then that's a lot of water moving down the Amite. Even further south, however, you got to think about Bayou Manchac and all that water moving into the Amite, because we still got water coming back into our rivers because of that easterly flow. It's been pushing that water in since Marco all week. And as you see, even moving forward, that rain could be quite immense at times. So again, we've got rainfall totals 3 to 5, higher amounts and rain bands. Just be well aware of that. Again, gusts, mainly tropical storm force winds for us. Hurricane force winds just a hair. Maybe the far western portions of our viewing area could see some hurricane force winds, and then the chance for a few isolated tornadoes out there. Just kind of like today, they were back to back to back out there. We had I think about 16 to 20 tornado warnings across the area. We did get one confirmed tornado. I also want to point out too that, again, they can quickly spawn in this type of environment because the shear is definitely there. The atmosphere is very unstable, and when you start to get these feeder bands kind of scraping along or scraping inland off the coast, yeah, that's going to happen, and that's going to be the concern as we head into those early morning hours. So we're watching that, and I just want to show you again, I'm going to step back and show you the big picture out there, because again, we do sit underneath that tornado watch now until 9 o'clock in the morning. And I think that is considerable because that is a very long window to be underneath a tornado watch. We actually started a tornado watch at about 2 o'clock this afternoon or shortly after, and now it's extending until 9 o'clock in the morning for all of our entire viewing area. So we are getting some questions out there. Are there currently any tornado warnings? Right now, no. We are clear of tornado warnings, but just that watch. We're asking about Denham Springs area, potential for heavy rainfall, maybe a couple tropical storm force winds. I think you guys are going to probably sit in the wind gust category of probably 30 to maybe 50 at times. However, again, sustained winds and heavy rainfall, never a good combination because obviously the concern here is that we've got some saturated soils. That heavy rain continues to fall, and it really doesn't take what you would expect for winds to topple some trees here because, again, our taproot doesn't go completely down. We have root bases that go almost outward, and that's why you get a lot of times see those, again, you got nothing really holding that tree to the ground. So again, lighter winds could actually do more damage at times, and if that happens, again, we could be seeing multiple power outages across the area. I do want to point that, again, we're underneath an enhanced risk for severe weather, and obviously that means our tornadic threat is still sitting a little bit high at this point. And also at this point, I do want to point out that we are looking at some of those outer bands getting a little bit closer to the area. You can see that we're starting to see some of that rainfall move across the Chapalaya Basin. And notice the big picture here. You can see just south of Cameron, we can see where the eye currently sits. Zoom in a little bit, even a little bit of lightning in the mix, but heavy rainfall through Vermilion Bay, through Abbeville. I mean, very intense rainfall rates all the way up into Lafayette at this point, New Iberia, all the way down to the coastline, and even as far west as Sabine Pass, starting to see some of that heavy rainfall with that main band coming in. And you can still see the concern is it kind of gets trapped and cut off because radar scans only go so far. You don't see all the rainfall a little bit further south that extends back into the Gulf of Mexico. So this is going to be that conveyor belt. We need this conveyor belt to get cut off, and that probably won't happen until tomorrow, maybe midday tomorrow. Before that, we actually see that happen. So that's what we're going to watch very closely. I do want to point out, just kind of showing you our power outage index. I don't know how accurate it is, but as you see, it looks like that a lot of areas could see widespread power outages and could be pretty extreme in a lot of areas. What is Lake Charles seeing right now? That's a good question. And then you see kind of right here, right now they're already starting to see hurricane force winds across the area. So already in Jennings, you can see that the winds are already up to about 39 miles per hour. And anything in that purple, you can see even where the eye is. So those winds are, we're talking hurricane force winds currently at this point. Again, just one more thing, because of that possibility, and even here, just to show you what we've been looking at, I'm going to show you just some incredible footage here. Let me see if I can find it now. Yeah, we're going to look at the Fort Poe. Yeah, you want to talk about very strong winds, and I mean, you can see that this is going away from the radar versus coming back towards the Doppler radar site. So, yeah, you can see winds well in excess of 100 miles per hour. Around the center or around the eye wall of Laura at this point. So again, that's currently what we're watching. I'm trying to answer some questions too while I'm doing this on the fly. Let's see what we got here. What about West Baton Rouge Parish? Odds are pretty high that you're going to see tropical storm force winds. I think that's the key here. You're also going to see some very heavy rainfall. Again, you guys could be seeing a lot of that rainfall picking up probably around 2 o'clock in the morning and lasting maybe until about 8 o'clock in the morning. So, yeah, it could be pretty extreme. I also want to point out around the Lake Charles area, already Holly Beach, we've got some reports that it's currently underwater at this point, and it's only going to get worse as we continue into the evening hours. So, continue to load up the questions. I appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. We're obviously going to have more information once Laura makes landfall. We'll have another update and give you the latest information out there. Also, make sure you download our free app. It's got all the information you need. And if you're watching and if you're concerned about Lake Charles, if you're here, if you're one of the evacuees sitting at one of the hotel rooms or with a family and friends, we're going to try to give you as much information as possible because, again, We want you to have as much confidence knowing what's going on and what you're going to get back to when you have to head back home. So again, this is a very dire situation that's going to, again, something for us obviously that we're going to continue to keep a very close eye and try to really give you all the information that we know as we head into those morning hours. Again, thanks for joining us, and we will continue to have more information throughout the overnight.